There is something happening to your body every single night, and most people with acid reflux have no idea it is working against them. Not the food you ate at dinner, not the stress from the day, something far more basic, far more physical, and far more fixable than you might think. And the fact that you are still reaching for certain drinks before bed, drinks that seem harmless, maybe even comforting, could be the exact reason why you keep waking up at 2 in the morning with that burning sensation crawling up your chest. Tonight, we are going to change that. This episode is about nighttime reflux, one of the most disruptive, underestimated, and mismanaged forms of gastroesophageal reflux disease. We are going to talk about why acid reflux gets worse at night, what is actually happening in your esophagus while you sleep, and specifically, which drinks can genuinely help reduce that burning sensation and discomfort in the hours before bed. Not myths, not internet trends, actual drinks, grounded in what we know about esophageal physiology and digestive chemistry. But before we get there, let us start with the mechanism. Because if you do not understand why nighttime reflux is different from daytime reflux, you will keep treating them the same way, and that is a mistake. During the day, gravity is working for you. When you are upright, standing, sitting, walking, gravity pulls stomach contents downward. Your lower esophageal sphincter, the muscular valve that sits at the junction between your esophagus and your stomach, gets natural support from your posture. Even if that valve relaxes at the wrong moment, gravity makes it harder for acid to travel upward and reach the sensitive lining of your esophagus. When you lie down, the stomach and the esophagus are at roughly the same level. There is no gravitational barrier. If the lower esophageal sphincter relaxes, and for people with GERD, it relaxes far more often than it should, and sometimes stays partially open, stomach acid has a clear, unobstructed path into the esophagus. It does not need to fight gravity. It just flows. This is not a minor discomfort issue. Chronic nighttime reflux is one of the most significant risk factors for Barrett's esophagus, a condition in which the normal cells lining the lower esophagus are replaced by a different type of cell, more resistant to acid, but also associated with an increased risk of esophageal cancer. The people who tend to develop this complication are not necessarily the ones with the most severe symptoms. They are often the ones who have had nighttime reflux go unmanaged for years. If you have been waking up at night with a burning chest, a sour taste in your mouth, or a hoarse voice in the morning, or if you have been sleeping poorly without understanding why, this is the information you need. If this channel is helping you understand what is actually going on with your body, take a moment right now to subscribe and leave a like. It costs you nothing, and it helps us reach more people who need this information. There are thousands of people searching for answers about reflux every single day, and most of what they find is incomplete or just wrong. Your support helps make sure this channel is what they find instead. Now, let us get to the practical part. Because while we cannot cover everything about managing nighttime GERD in a single video, there is one area where people make consistent, correctable mistakes: what they drink in the hours before bed. Most people think about food when they think about reflux triggers. And food absolutely matters. We have covered that in other episodes, and will continue to. But drinks are often overlooked, and they can have an outsized effect at night, because liquids move through the stomach and interact with the lower esophageal sphincter in ways that are different from solid food. Let us talk about what to avoid first, briefly, because it matters for context. Alcohol is one of the most significant nighttime reflux triggers there is. It works against you in at least 3 distinct ways. First, it directly relaxes the lower esophageal sphincter, not because of any particular ingredient, but because of the ethanol itself. Even moderate amounts of alcohol consumed in the 2 to 3 hours before bed will impair the sphincter's ability to stay closed. Second, alcohol stimulates gastric acid secretion, so you go to bed with more acid in your stomach than you would otherwise. Third, alcohol disrupts sleep architecture. Specifically, it reduces the amount of time you spend in deep, restorative sleep, which means you are more likely to wake up in the middle of the night, and when you do, reflux symptoms become more noticeable. Carbonated drinks, including sparkling water, are another common nighttime mistake. The gas in these beverages expands in the stomach, increases intragastric pressure, and promotes what are called transient lower esophageal sphincter relaxations. These are the brief, involuntary moments when the valve opens spontaneously. The more pressure builds in the stomach, the more frequently those relaxations happen. Drinking carbonated water before bed because you think it is a healthier choice than soda is, from a reflux standpoint, still a problem. Coffee, even decaffeinated coffee, contains compounds that relax the lower esophageal sphincter. Caffeinated coffee does this more aggressively, but decaf is not neutral. If you are someone who drinks a cup of decaf as an evening ritual, it may feel harmless, but for people with GERD, it is worth reconsidering. Citrus juices, orange juice, grapefruit juice, lemon water, are highly acidic and can directly irritate an already inflamed esophageal lining. They also stimulate acid production. These should not be part of any pre-sleep routine for someone managing reflux. Whole milk, despite its reputation as a reflux remedy, is complicated. Cold milk can temporarily neutralize acid and provide brief relief, but the fat content in whole milk stimulates the release of cholecystokinin, a hormone that relaxes the lower esophageal sphincter. The short-term relief is followed by increased acid production and a looser sphincter. This is why people notice that milk seems to help for 20 minutes and then makes things worse. If you have been doing this at night, you now know why. So what should you drink? The first drink is one that has been studied more than any other in the context of reflux and esophageal health. Plain water, consumed the right way. This sounds almost too simple to be worth mentioning, but the evidence is clear and the mechanism is real. Water is the only liquid that is definitively neutral in terms of its effect on the lower esophageal sphincter. It does not stimulate acid production. It does not increase intragastric pressure. It does not relax the valve. And it actively helps clear the esophagus of any acid that has already refluxed. The key is in how and when you drink it. A small amount of water, roughly 150 to 200 milliliters, which is about 2/3 of a cup, consumed 20 to 30 minutes before lying down, can help clear residual acid from the esophagus. This mimics the clearance function of swallowing. You are essentially giving your esophagus a gentle rinse before you lose the daytime swallowing reflex. What does not help, and what some people do that actually makes things worse, is drinking a large amount of water right before bed. A large volume of liquid increases the amount of fluid in the stomach, raises intragastric pressure, and can promote reflux in the early part of the night. The goal is a moderate, well-timed amount, not a large glass consumed right as you are pulling back the covers. Room temperature water is better than cold water for this purpose. Cold water can cause brief spasms in the esophagus in people with sensitive esophageal tissue, which can be uncomfortable and sometimes misinterpreted as reflux itself. The second drink is chamomile tea, prepared without honey or any additives, and consumed warm rather than hot, at least 1 hour before lying down. Chamomile has a long history of use for gastrointestinal complaints, and while the research specifically on GERD is not extensive, the mechanisms by which it may help are well understood. Chamomile contains compounds called apigenin and other flavonoids that have mild anti-inflammatory and antispasmodic properties. The antispasmodic effect is relevant here because one of the contributors to transient lower esophageal sphincter relaxations is esophageal and gastric smooth muscle activity. Reducing that activity, even mildly, may help the sphincter maintain better tone in the early hours of sleep. There is also evidence that chamomile has a mild gastroprotective effect. It may help protect the gastric mucosa, the inner lining of the stomach, from some of the effects of acid. For someone who is prone to both reflux and mild gastritis, this can be meaningful. The one caution worth noting: chamomile belongs to the daisy family, and people with known allergies to ragweed, chrysanthemums, or related plants can have reactions to chamomile. This is not common, but it is worth being aware of if you have seasonal allergies. The preparation matters. Chamomile tea should be made with water that has been taken off the boil, not boiling water poured directly on the tea bag, which can degrade some of the active compounds. Let it steep for 5 minutes. Let it cool to a comfortable warm temperature, and drink it slowly. Adding honey might seem benign, but honey is a common reflux trigger in some people, and it adds unnecessary complexity to what should be a simple, clean drink. Avoid it if you are using chamomile specifically for its esophageal benefits. Before we get to the third drink, I want to ask you something directly. If you have been living with nighttime reflux, waking up with that burning, or that acidic taste, or that feeling that you just cannot sleep comfortably no matter what position you try, I want to know where you are watching this from. Drop your city or your country in the comments below. It genuinely means something to know where this information is reaching, and it reminds us that reflux is not a small, local problem. It is something that affects people everywhere, in every kind of life, and it deserves to be taken seriously. So tell us where you are. We read those comments. The third drink is low-fat warm milk, specifically low-fat, not whole milk, for the reasons we already discussed, combined with a small amount of oatmeal steeped in it. This is less of a standalone drink and more of a pre-sleep preparation, but it deserves to be on this list because it addresses nighttime reflux through a mechanism that none of the other options cover. The issue with nighttime acid reflux is not only about the sphincter. It is also about the amount of acid in the stomach and how long the stomach takes to empty. When the stomach takes a long time to empty its contents into the small intestine, a condition called delayed gastric emptying, the window during which reflux can occur is extended. You go to bed with a full stomach. The stomach stays full for hours, and the risk of acid traveling upward is prolonged. Oatmeal has a well-established effect on gastric emptying. Its soluble fiber content, primarily beta-glucan, forms a gel-like substance in the stomach that slows the digestion of other food components and, importantly, helps regulate the rate at which the stomach empties. This might sound like it would make things worse. Slower emptying means food stays in the stomach longer, but the mechanism here is different from the kind of delayed emptying caused by high-fat foods. Oatmeal's effect on emptying is regulatory rather than obstructive. It helps create a steady, controlled movement of stomach contents rather than the erratic, pressure-building process that high-fat foods cause. Low-fat milk provides a small amount of protein and calcium. The calcium in milk has a short-term acid buffering effect. The protein stimulates a hormone called gastrin, which actually increases lower esophageal sphincter tone. This is the opposite effect from what fat produces. Low-fat milk, in modest amounts, can actually tighten the sphincter modestly rather than loosen it. The preparation for this pre-sleep option is simple. Cook a small portion of plain oatmeal, not instant oatmeal with added sugar or flavoring, in low-fat milk rather than water. The quantity should be modest, no more than half a cup of dry oats with about 1.5 cups of low-fat milk. Eat and drink this about 90 minutes to 2 hours before lying down. This gives the stomach time to begin processing it and reduces the volume remaining in the stomach when you actually go to bed. This works best when it replaces a heavier evening snack, not when it is added on top of a full dinner. If you are eating a substantial dinner at 8 in the evening and then adding this at 9:30, you are adding to the stomach load, not managing it. If you have found value in this explanation of why nighttime reflux is so different from what you experience during the day, and why the choices you make in the 2 hours before bed have such a direct impact on how you sleep, subscribe to this channel right now if you have not already, and hit the like button on this video. Every time you do that, it signals to the platform that this content is worth sharing, and it helps us reach people who are managing reflux in silence, without the right information, and making it worse without realizing it. That is who this channel is for. Now let us spend a moment on timing, because the when is just as important as the what. The single most impactful change most people with nighttime GERD can make is also the most straightforward. Do not eat or drink anything significant within 2 to 3 hours of lying down. This recommendation appears consistently across clinical guidelines for GERD management, and it is supported by a straightforward body of research on gastric emptying rates and lower esophageal sphincter behavior. The reason is simple. The stomach takes roughly 2 to 4 hours to empty a moderate meal, depending on the composition of the food. High-fat meals take longer. High-protein meals take a moderate amount of time. Simple carbohydrates move through relatively quickly. When you lie down with a full or even half-full stomach, the mechanical pressure from the stomach content pushes against the lower esophageal sphincter from below. That pressure, combined with the gravitational disadvantage of being horizontal, is a near-perfect recipe for reflux. The 2 to 3 hour window before bed is not a strict cutoff in the sense that reflux becomes impossible after that point, but it dramatically reduces the stomach volume and intragastric pressure at the time you lie down. The drinks we discussed, the measured amount of water, the chamomile tea, the low-fat milk oatmeal preparation, should all be consumed within this window, but ideally closer to the 90-minute to 2 hour mark before bed, not right before you turn off the light. There is another physical strategy that works in parallel with the right drinks, and it is worth mentioning here, because it directly addresses the gravitational problem we started with, elevating the head of your bed. This is not the same as sleeping with extra pillows. Pillows under your head elevate your neck and upper body, but they can also flex the torso in a way that increases abdominal pressure, which is counterproductive. What you want is to elevate the entire upper portion of your body from the waist up, so that gravity is working for you even while you are horizontal. The recommended elevation is between 6 and 8 inches at the head of the bed. You can achieve this by placing firm wedges or bed risers under the legs at the head of the bed, or by using a specialized foam wedge pillow that maintains a consistent incline along the full length of the upper body. This position has been shown in clinical studies to reduce nighttime acid exposure in the esophagus, reduce the frequency of reflux episodes, and improve sleep quality in people with GERD. It is not a cure, but combined with the right pre-sleep drink choices and the timing guidelines we have discussed, it can make a significant and measurable difference in how your nights feel. There is also the question of sleep position. Sleeping on your left side is consistently associated with fewer nighttime reflux events compared to sleeping on your right side or on your back. The anatomy is the reason. When you lie on your left side, the stomach sits below the level of the esophagus in a way that makes it harder for gastric contents to reach the lower esophageal sphincter. When you lie on your right side, the opposite is true. The stomach presses more directly against the sphincter, and the angle of the gastroesophageal junction becomes more favorable for reflux. Sleeping on your back is the position where the interaction between stomach contents and the sphincter depends most heavily on intragastric pressure, which is why back sleepers with GERD benefit most from head-of-bed elevation. If you are a committed back sleeper who cannot transition to the left side, elevation becomes even more important for you. Let us also address the question of medications briefly, because some people are managing nighttime reflux with proton pump inhibitors or H2 blockers and believe that the medication handles everything. It does not. Proton pump inhibitors, drugs like omeprazole, esomeprazole, pantoprazole, reduce the amount of acid the stomach produces. They are effective, and for many people with GERD they are an important part of management. But they do not prevent reflux events. They reduce the acidity of what reflux is. If you are on a proton pump inhibitor and still waking up at night with discomfort, it may be because the volume of material reaching your esophagus is still significant, even if it is less acidic. The physical and behavioral strategies, timing, sleep position, bed elevation, and the right drinks complement medication rather than replacing it. H2 blockers, like famotidine, work differently. They reduce acid secretion by a different mechanism and have a faster onset than proton pump inhibitors for some people. Some gastroenterologists recommend taking an H2 blocker specifically at bedtime for nighttime GERD control, in addition to or instead of a proton pump inhibitor. This is a conversation to have with your doctor based on your specific situation, severity, and history. What medication cannot do is change the behavior of your lower esophageal sphincter, restore the gravitational advantage you need at night, or change the fact that you swallow less while sleeping. That is why lifestyle management, including what you drink before bed, remains essential even for people who are on medication. One more thing deserves attention here, and it is something that often goes undiagnosed: laryngopharyngeal reflux, sometimes called silent reflux or LPR. This is a form of reflux that does not always produce the classic burning sensation in the chest. Instead, it shows up as a chronic hoarse or rough voice in the morning, a persistent need to clear the throat, a sensation of something stuck in the throat, or a chronic mild cough. The acid or pepsin, the digestive enzyme, reaches not just the esophagus but the throat, larynx, and even the nasal passages. People with LPR often do not know they have reflux because they do not have heartburn. They attribute the hoarseness to allergies or aging, the throat clearing to postnasal drip, the cough to environmental factors, and they go years without addressing the underlying cause. Nighttime is when LPR tends to be most active for exactly the same reasons we have discussed: the loss of gravity, the reduced swallowing, the prolonged contact time. All of these allow acid and pepsin to reach the upper airway structures while you sleep. If you recognize yourself in that description, the morning voice, the constant throat clearing, the cough that nobody has been able to explain, the management principles are the same as for classic GERD, but they need to be applied even more carefully. The pre-sleep drink strategy matters. The timing of the last meal matters. The sleep position matters. And the conversation with your doctor needs to happen, because LPR can cause progressive damage to the vocal cords and larynx that is worth catching early. Let us now bring together what we have covered. Nighttime acid reflux is not simply a more uncomfortable version of daytime reflux. It is a physiologically distinct problem, one where you lose two of your most important defenses, gravity and the swallowing reflex, at the same time. The damage it can cause is more serious than daytime reflux because of the prolonged contact time between acid and the esophageal lining. The drinks that can genuinely help reduce nighttime burning and discomfort are specific and grounded in mechanism, not in folk remedy tradition. Plain water, consumed in a moderate amount 20 to 30 minutes before bed, helps clear the esophagus. Chamomile tea, consumed warm and without additives at least 1 hour before lying down, offers mild anti-inflammatory and antispasmodic support. Low-fat milk with plain oatmeal, consumed 90 minutes to 2 hours before bed, addresses both the acid buffering need and the gastric emptying regulation that matters for how full your stomach is when you lie down. These work best as part of a broader set of nighttime habits. The 2 to 3 hour eating cutoff before bed, head of bed elevation, and sleeping on your left side. None of these changes is radical. All of them are evidence-supported. And for many people, the combination of small adjustments produces a meaningful, sometimes dramatic improvement in how they sleep and how they feel in the morning. The takeaway from this episode is not that there is a magic drink that cures reflux at night. The takeaway is that the choices you make in the 2 to 3 hours before you lie down are more consequential than most people with GERD realize, and that making the right choices consistently, not occasionally, is what changes the long-term pattern. There is a great deal more to cover about GERD, its connection to sleep apnea, the role of stress and the nervous system, the specific foods that affect the lower esophageal sphincter, and when reflux symptoms cross the line into something that requires more urgent medical evaluation. Stay with this channel. The next video we have prepared goes deeper into a part of reflux management that most people with GERD have never been told about, and it may completely change how you approach the condition. You do not want to miss it.